Hello and welcome back to part 5 of my video process. Over here, I am starting to work on the background. So basically, with my trustworthy symmetry tool, I started to work on the decorative elements that I want to have on the moon. Originally, I left it alone for quite a while, and then eventually I came up with this solution where I just don't want to have circles that got cut at different places. So I just use this, I just create one graphic symbol and then I place them along the moon. Uh, Sorry about all the snapping, but basically, this was a bug where Photoshop actually, whenever I move the canvas, it just tries to snaps to the corner of the canvas. And yeah, there's no faster way to do this, but basically just placing them all together. Then I opened the layer effects and I used the stroke on that layer. And I also adjusted the levels. With the Photoshop stroke function, you have to make sure that your layer is really clean. So it's kind of troublesome that it always has some kind of extra stroking. It will really show you all the artifacts that's around your graphic. So yeah, just make sure that it's really clean, I guess. Um, then I just try to make all these finer adjustments and trying to fill up this moon shape. Um, thank God I didn't have to draw this manually. So over here, I was playing around with having a bit more colors on the moon on the background, but I also want to make sure that it's not too distracting. And it is really more of a decorative kind of background, so I would think of it as more of a 2D graphic design rather than a 3D design. So it's not really much about receiving light or not having light. It's whatever that's helping the character to pop out and whatever helps to frame her a bit better. Um, and then over here, I start to sketch what I want to have for the background. Uh, and initially, my idea was to maybe having more lines that follow whatever that frame is, but it didn't really work out for me. I think it was too messy. Um, I was basing these kind of graphic lines on the Turkish tiles that I have in my reference folder, and I wanted to play around with the colors and maybe just have more of a tile, and I didn't like that. So over here, I pulled out the other symmetry tool. I forgot the name for it, but basically it creates a rotary kind of symmetry, and it sort of have this kind of flower shape. And I did not like the flower shape. Um, I thought it was just kind of distracting for me. And over here, I actually tried to have more of this kind of Islamic tulips. Yeah, I actually didn't realize that tulips are Turkey's national flower. And so I realized that a lot of those Islamic symbols, the flower that they're actually drawing is tulips. At first, I thought they were iris, but yeah, they are tulips. I think there might be some irises, but it's definitely more tulips, and that's their national flower. So eventually, I give up with the flower idea, and then I start to play with more of those geometric Islamic shapes. And I thought that kind of works out a bit better. I liked having the contrast of the geometry shapes so that all the geometry lines are actually drawn towards her top. So I find that works pretty well for me. So the idea over here is that I want to have some color variation in her in the background, and have all the lines drawn to her. However, I don't want it to be too distracting. So mainly it's just creating some kind of color noise in the background. I played around a little bit so that I know that I wanted the stroke to be this kind of gold kind of color. That's why I used the layer stroke effects while I was sketching with the symmetry tool. You have to be pretty careful when you are sketching anything with the stroke layer effects turned on because it tend to really slow down the performance of your computer and sometimes it causes crashing. It seems that it's always calculating a lot of pixel. And this is also why I like to use the stroke tool together with my brush that doesn't have any opacity. This way it's easier for the stroke layer effects to work. Otherwise it always create a lot of random floating pixels and it doesn't work very well with any opacity on your brush. Over here, I also tried to sketch out again this kind of Islamic tulip kind of shape. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be tulip. And I think at this stage, I still wasn't sure if it was tulip. But I think I wanted some kind of this floral element in there, and I tried to actually have this pink kind of color to have some color accent. But I think in the end it was too distracting for me, so I changed it to white. After that, I started researching what that flower is, and eventually I realized it's actually tulips. And a lot of those patterns are actually based on the tulip shape petals, which made a lot of sense. I wish I kind of know a bit earlier. Then I started working on the framing. The framing patterns, again, a lot of it are based on those Islamic patterns, but also I researched a lot of Islamic copper metal decoration, like their copper teacup, copper decor boxes, and I think a lot of them have this kind of floral leaf pattern. And again, just trying to reference all that. Um, I just really wanted to have a decorative kind of framing, but also I kept the contrast pretty low so that you don't get too distracted. Again, over here, I am using the same trick where I added the layer stroke effects while I was sketching. Uh, that's why I love this brush because, you know, it doesn't have opacity and I can see the stroke pretty well. But if you do try this method, trying to merge the layer with something else or just apply the layer effects, because it can slow your computer down quite quickly. I'm actually on a pretty powerful machine and it has no problem doing 3D stuff, but it actually have a lot of trouble calculating all these layers after a while. So definitely, uh, definitely try to be careful with using the layer effects stuff. And the stroke just really saves me a lot of time. Even though it's not super clean sometimes, but I think as background elements, I'm pretty okay with it because it's really there to add some texture without being distracting. Then I start to place around these flowers. I wish there's a tool to like, you know, kind of do this placement kind of thing, but with the symmetry kind of tool going on. And here's where I start to play with the colors. And eventually, I just think a very fainted white just looks a lot better and it's just not distracting. Um, over here on the top, initially I thought it would be probably nice to have more of a accent. In the end, I think it was still too much contrast over there and it keeps drawing my attention there, so I eventually changed it back to white as well. But you can see how it's always a struggle for me whenever, no matter what I do. Um, so nothing's really easy for me. It was just a lot of micro decision making, and over here I wanted to have some more decorative lines, and I eventually thought it was too much, so I just left it blank. And here's where I am at the end of this video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and in the next video I will go through the design of the sword and finish it up.